Hello, this is Jeffrey Fox here, and in this unit, we're describing the features that we use to classify the 51 big data use cases that is discussed in a separate section. These use cases are described there in terms of their algorithms and, more importantly, what they actually do, and some rather cryptic classification is given. These slides here flesh out that classification and give somewhat variable amount of detail depending on the classification. This work is based on that done by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, who have a big data public working group which worked from June to September 2013. The leaders of that activity were Wo Chang of NIST, Robert Marcus of ET Strategies, and Chaitan Baru of UC San Diego. And of course, we remember, as always, in this class, which is also known not only as big data, but also as X-informatics, that the motto is to use clouds, running data analytics collaboratively, processing big data to solve problems in X-informatics. And here are all the various X-informatics that we have dug out over the last few months. In this lesson, we actually summarize that classification, and then we go in to give a little bit more detail of some of those classification areas. This was all done as part of the work of the requirements and use case subgroup of the overall big data public working group. So one of the things that we classify in those 51 cases is what's big, which is essentially what is the parallelism over. Big data runs on big clouds, which have lots of nodes and cores and processes and threads running simultaneously. That's parallel computing. The way you do parallel computing is to find some big number, which measures the size of something, and chop the things which is big up into parts and run one part on each thread or process, the so-called single program multiple data model. So if we look at those use cases, we found that the parallelism is sometimes over people, sometimes that's the users of an application, such as the users of a search engine, or it's the subjects of the application, like, I don't know, collecting census data, and sometimes both. There are a special class of users of application, like researchers or doctors. Like in the case of doctors, there are another set of users called patients. The doctors are the people who use decision tools to make decisions, and then they, in order to make a decision about one patient, they look at a lot of other patients, using parallelism over those other patients to speed up the analysis. A critical thing which there's parallelism over is items. Like many of the applications involve images, you have parallelism over images. Electronic medical records, which actually tend to be actually related to people. Gene sequences, material properties, manufactured object specifications. These are custom data sets running over a particular field. And another example we find is parallelism over things that are being modeled, like vehicles and people. Another area where parallelism is seen is over the members of the Internet of Things, where they're meant to be by 2020. Various estimates, but at least over 50 billion things sitting there. So that's a pretty large number. Another important concept, which has different meanings in different contexts, is events. If you have a telescope recording the cosmos, and then you might look for anomalous Events like exploding supernovas represented as changes from in an image from night to night. Another set of things are like fraudulent credit card use or turbulence in the atmosphere. So these are the detected outlier, unexpected, or um, specially recorded happenings. And of course, there can be lots of those. Many people think graphs are going to grow in importance because if you set up a chain of consequent chain of connections, say between doctors and hospitals and drug companies and drugs and diseases and patients, that will end up as a complicated graph with complicated interconnections with meaning to the interconnections. Processing such a graph is highly non-trivial. There are other types of networks, or actually also graphs, in fact, which are rather simple. If you take a learning network, as we covered in one of the use cases, those learning networks have huge size, billions of nodes, and those, however, have a simple structure. They're not generally regular structure with the doctor, disease, patient, hospital graph had. Another set of things you get parallelism over is the tweets, and the blogs, and the documents, and the web pages, which you see when you do information retrieval, and you would also get parallelism over the characters and words in those entities. A lot of those applications are set up in the so-called bag of words model, where the words essentially represent the dimensions of vectors representing the document. Another simple thing you have parallelism of is just the resources, like the files or the data itself, when you want to do parallel backup or process the data in some sense in parallel. And several of the applications involve large-scale simulation. When you do large-scale simulation and do parallel computing there, you'll find parallelism over particles, parallelism over cells carved out in the domain you're working in, also parallelism over mesh points. So those are the things you get parallelism of. All of these are things which are large, and it's the bigness of the number of these things which means you get big data.